Hey guys, welcome to my channel Tabletop with Tom. I'm Tom and today we're going to get stuck into painting the Lord of Plagues himself, Mortarion. With Mortarion built up and in all of his sub-assemblies, it was time to get some paint onto him. But what we had to do first is get an undercoat on so our future layers of paint stick nice and firmly, and so with general gaming wear and tear, none of the paint is going to come chipping off. So to do this, I used Valljeo polyurethane primer, put through an airbrush, making sure I have 100% coverage over all of the plastic areas of the model. I also was doing this outside, making sure that I'm in a well-ventilated space so I'm not breathing in any of those paint particles. With the undercoat down, it's time to get some other colours onto him. What I'm going to start off with is a mix of Dubai Brown from Scale 75 and Mephiston Red from Games Workshop. It's a little bit of a strange mix, but the Scale 75 paints come out nice and matte when they're applied to the model. Now, this mix is about 50-50 and ends up looking like a dark red brick if you're a little bit unsure of what color you're going for. I applied this with an airbrush, making sure to spray nice thin coats over multiple passes to generate a nice smooth layer with none of the black showing through. What this color will help us do is set up a recess color to start generating some depth when we put our green armor on. With all of the red brown mixed down, it's time to get to the classic Death Guard green armor. Now to do this, I've mixed up Deathworld Forest and Ogryn Camo in about a 50-50 mix. I know Games Workshop makes their own paint literally called Death Guard green, but I decided to mix my own to match it a little bit more closely to the rest of my Death Guard army. With the base layer green down, it's time to get some of the highlights on. In order to do this, I've mixed up some Ogryn Camo with some Flat Skits Yellow in about another 50-50 mix. Now, it looks a little bit something like this, and although it looks very bright, it's going to be painted on quite thinly, allowing us to build up those highlights nice and smoothly. Now, I'm focusing these highlights on the raised parts of the model. These parts are the areas where the light or the sun would hit the most over Mortarion's armor. Now if you think it's bright enough, you can stop there, but I'm going to kick it up to 11 and add in a little bit of pale sand into our highlight mix. Now what this will do is it'll really kick up the brightness of our armor and make Mortarion stand out on the battlefield. Now, not really like he needs any help in that regard because he's going to be the largest model in my entire Death Guard army. With all of our base colours down and our highlights done on the armour, it's time to make Mortarion a true member of the 14th Legion, adding in our scratches, dings, scuffs and pockmark detailing to really make his armour look like he's been through 10,000 years of constant eternal warfare. Getting out the Dubai Brown from earlier and the Corvus Black from Games Workshop, I mixed these two colours together on a dry palette. Now, there was no real ratio to this, I just mixed the two colours to a point that I liked, and then with a sponge brush, I applied the paint to Mortarion in the places that would see the most wear and tear, such as his joints, his knees, as well as his shoulder pads. Anywhere that I would think there might be any sort of damage, I applied the sponge brush all over. This brown is forming the base of all of the chipping and damage that's occurring all over Mortarion's armour. I like to think that there isn't much time for him to top up the paint on his armour, nor does he really care much about his appearance, because after all, he does follow the god of decay, so it's only fitting that his armour resembles that. To our Corvus Black and Dubai Brown mix, we're adding a little bit of Riser Rust. Now, this is a dry brushing colour from Games Workshop, but being highly pigmented and very thick, it surprisingly makes a very good stippling colour. Now for this step, I wouldn't recommend you using one of your nice brushes. You'd be better off using a brush that's seen better days, or one that you just don't really care about anymore, because we're not going to be washing this brush in between coats. We want to load up the brush with quite a lot of paint, but not too much paint so that we end up with giant blobs all over Mortarion's armour, but just enough so we can place the orange into the lower half of some of the larger chips and dents on his armour to give us a sense of realism and a little bit of depth. With the brown and the orange down, he's looking lovely and damaged. So now what we need to do is start highlighting some of the edges of his armour, as well as highlighting the top edges of some of his scratches and scuff marks to really make them stand out. To do this, I'm using the same mix that we did in the last step of highlighting Mortarion's armour, with Flash Gets Yellow, Ogre and Camo, and mixing in just a little bit of Ice Yellow as well. Throughout this step, you'll also see me add some small scratches or X marks across Mortarion's armour. I'm just doing this so it adds another layer of detail to give our model a little more visual interest. He's looking suitably gritty and grimy now, which is fantastic. I'm really liking how he's looking so far. But having a look at some of the plate detail across his armour, it's not looking quite as separated as I would like. In order to fix this, what I did is I got out our trusty Dubai Brown from Scale 75, as well as the Mephiston Red from Games Workshop, mixed them together to get the same base colour that we used just after we'd undercoated Mortarion. I added a little bit of Flow Improver into the mix as well, thinking that it would enable the paint to flow a bit easier and flow a little easier into the recesses, although I didn't notice much difference compared to water, so if you were to just use water, you'd be completely fine with that. As I was doing this step, I quickly realised that I was leaving a sharp line between the green armour and the red brand in the shadows. In order to fix this, what I did is I cleaned my brush as soon as I laid down the paint and then dragged the pigment out of the recess, making a gradient across the armour panel. This tinted the armour and left it nice and dark toward the recessed areas. Now this step was then repeated for a second time as I grabbed some leviathan purple from Games Workshop and mixed that in to our red brown. Now what this does is it really deepens up the shadows and the recesses to give us a really nice contrast across the rest of the model. With that step completed, his armor is all finished. Now you could go back and keep adding in some more chipping or some more text detail across the rest of the model, or you could go back and really push those transitions between the shadows and his green armor. Alright guys, this brings us to the end of my first video. I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and if you have any questions about any of the equipment that I used, it's all down in the description below. Down there you'll also find my links to all of my social media so you can check up on what I'm doing during the week. In our next video, we're going to be checking out how to paint all of the drapery and the cloth that's covering Mortarion. And most importantly, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you at the tabletop.